If you're like me, you get bored really easily. This is about practice and people who get bored very easily. My daughter has started playing guitar and she really enjoys it, but only for a short amount of time. This is her approach to everything. She's just like I was as a child, very easily bored, moves on to different things really quickly, and full of curiosity and questions. What I'm going to do today, upon reflection of watching her approach to learning instruments, it kind of brought home the fact that we're all different and we all have different approaches. So there may be some tips that you might find interesting yourself and you might want to try out. So breaking musicianship into different aspects really helps. And as long as you're playing with intent and as long as you are playing the instrument, you should be improving in different ways. So one of the things that I'm going to also demonstrate today is how you could use a tool. This is the Hotone or Hot One Pulze 30. This was provided to me by Hotone, and it's been lent to me to do some reviews on. I've done that review, but I find it quite useful to practice with and keep me interested. So I'm going to show you some different things that you can do. First of all, musicianship is broken into loads of stuff. A lot of people go into playing an instrument by learning songs and building your knowledge of how to play by the things you can get out of the songs. And there's a lot of benefits to that, of course. I've been teaching guitar for around 20 years, and every time people want a framework of how to learn, so they will use songs. When I started breaking out of that framework of just learning songs, I started to really develop in different areas. And yes, it's great to study music, but one of the best things to learning songs is building a relationship with that song. And one of the best ways to do that is to transcribe that music. So there's two aspects to that. First of all, it's listening to that song, picking out the musical elements, and then putting that back down into a way that is universally legible, and that's the transcription piece. I think the most fundamental part of that is to internalize the music. So there's two bits to that. There's the pitches and the harmony and sort of the registers of the sound. So, notes, locations of the notes, and then there's the rhythmic aspect. So it's where the notes sit and are metered. So transcription is really interesting as a thing, and it's actually how I started playing myself. So I would hear things and I would play all the wrong notes till I found the right notes, and that's essentially it in a nutshell. So that's the first one to think about and to look at. Transcriptions, it can work in a really simple way. So what I'm going to do here is demonstrate my very, very first transcription. Now, I did this using records, using vinyls, but I'm going to go on Spotify and I'm going to find a piece of music here called Dazed and Confused. Now, I had Led Zeppelin 1. I was 7 years old. This was very exciting. I had a guitar. It was just about in tune. This is your starting point. Okay, that is a thing that you could transcribe yourself. Okay, so essentially it's listening for those first notes. So if I just rewind back to the very first bit there, that dom. Now I can sing that back. If I don't want to do that out loud, I could try my notes. So I know it's going to be low, so I'm going to try my E string. There we go. As it happens, I can hear that it sounds like my E string. Okay. I can test that as well by playing another note. Oh, well, it's not that note, and it sounds lower. So you're finding the notes just by working out, is it higher or lower? And then I go to the next piece. It doesn't sound like that. sounds like the note goes higher. So I'm going to just go to the next note. It's not quite right, so I'm going to try again. Okay, let me go back to my reference point. That sounds like it. So essentially, transcription at its very easiest point and its entry point is kind of like that. Find something with a really simple melody and then you can go back to it. So this is great with something like this because I've Bluetoothed it to my amp and I can hear it out through the amp and I can hear my guitar as well. So it's quite straightforward there as a piece to learn. I was very lucky that I just found that and I could work it out. If I was trying to learn something else, it would have been a bit more difficult and I may have switched off as 7-year-old me. Okay, so transcriptions is one way of doing it, working things out by ear. I've just got this ES335 here. First thing I tend to want to play is this. So yeah, any more of that and I'm going to get a copyright strike. So, again, last night I got it and I haven't played that song for a very long time, so I went and had a listen to it and tried to work it out. Another way that people learn is reading, of course, and that's fantastic. I read a lot, and one of the things that I do to help my sight reading, obviously, the old joke here is, how do you make a guitarist turn themselves down? Give them some music to read. One of the best things you could do is practice things that you've never played before, and then try and work it. Play an audio version. You can try reading things backwards. It's quite easy to do that. And that was in the Tommy Tedesco book as well, which is quite a good one to look at. But reading is another way. Somebody like me, I get very switched off very quickly because I have quite a short attention span, and I find things really interesting. I like to research them right the way down. I find an organic approach to playing, where I'm making sounds quite quickly and I'm being responsive. So I'm going to show you one of the things that you can do to sort of play, and practice is very much about getting elements of play in there. So playing is quite holistic. It will work on lots of different things. Okay, so with playing with drums, you can quite easily go into quite a joyful jam with a drummer. That is my favourite. They're my favourite person in the band, if I'm being honest. Is always the drummer. I'm going to do a quick shout out to Ian, to Lloyd, to Jim, to Rob, and to Dave, and all those people who I love playing with as drummers. I'm going to play a quick beat here. This is an R&B beat. Again, the more sort of you can play with your drum sounds, the more you can kind of have fun. Listen to that. So I've just practiced a little chord sequence there, but I'm practicing my timing. I'm starting to develop what is known as time feel. I can then start trying my lead around that. So a lot of musicians, when they're practicing lead playing, they'll just play over a track or they'll play on their own. When you start doing it over drums, you start becoming more sort of aware of your rhythms. developing from there, I'm starting to now think about some harmony. So I've got a little chord sequence going here that I'm enjoying. It's like a minor, seventh, a major, and then some kind of resolve back around a ninth. I can start practicing my lead, and a good solo or a good bit of lead, and this is something I'm working on in my playing, is something that will highlight the harmony whilst I'm playing it. I'm not just playing a line, I'm playing around those chords, and I'm highlighting some of those things. So I might start targeting certain notes. And again, within your practice, it's having that control to really sort of target a note or a feeling that you're trying to get. So having a drum kit to practice with is great, because you can then start naturally sort of bouncing off those things. Another one, which is sounds dull, but it's quite important, is a metronome. So I know some people detest metronomes. I'm just going to go four metronome. So I'm going to show you something now about pocket. So pocket is quite hard to describe. If I said, oh yeah, describe pocket, you'll probably get a load of different answers. But essentially, it's where the root of the rhythm is starting to sit. And guitarists, you know, guitar is a very rhythmical instrument. You could practice your pocket, and it's something that a lot of, if you want to become a professional musician, you kind of have to be able to do that as a fundamental thing. So I'm going to show you sort of how I could practice pocket. So I've got a beat here. It's about 90 BPM. So and then if I wanted to halve that, so that was about 100 BPM, I could half that down to 50, try and keep that. So something like that, I'm developing a spatial awareness of where those beats should be without the metronome happening, but catching it again. And that can be quite fun, because you can then set your own targets around that to say, okay, well, I can play it over one chord. How is this going to work over a whole chord sequence? You know. And then you can start doing your improvisation as well. Something like that. The other thing that you could do is practice with backing tracks. Now, this is where you need to be quite careful to get that development. It's about finding space. Now, quite often if you're starting to play in bands with your friends and that kind of thing, you might get a little solo, you know, but you might not have the space to actually say what you need to say. So you then have to exercise restraint and all those kinds of things to make a tasteful solo. So one of the things that I always do, there's two things that I do around this, but it's kind of limitless. I might start practicing with a backing track. So let's have a look. Let's have a look at a backing track. So I'm just on Spotify. All right, so there's a backing track somewhere. And you can use any way of doing these. Look at this. There's loads of stuff. Sad and emotional. Well, I'm not into that, but we can do. always recommend trying different genres to expand your skills and understand the way you might want to play to a stimulus. So this one's quite cool. You can hear a major seventh in that. So that could be one way to develop phrasing, or a space where you can practice ideas and develop ideas. So that might be something. Another thing that I had a really great guitar teacher called Dave Lowe, who he's still about in Spain playing. I think he lives in Valencia now. He used to do this thing. So he would say to me, right, we're going to do some improvisation now over a scale. I'm going to set some parameters for you. And I think that's another thing that you might want to do in your practice, is build a set of parameters to work around. Now, this works great if you, say, break a string on stage and you need to carry on through the song. You could probably try and improvise avoiding a string. You could practice soloing with just one string, and that can be hit or miss, but it could be really cool. So I'm going to put this on a bit more. Maybe my E won't break, maybe my E will break, and it'll be another string that I've got left to play on, like the G. Another one that was a classic was just giving me a certain area. So you can improvise, but only between this fret and this fret. And that can have some quite interesting results. So again, I might not be thinking about shapes. I might be thinking about shapes. I might just be learning that relationship between what my notes are and how my guitar sounds and feels. So this is something that you could, you know, I might hit a wrong note, and that's cool because we're practicing. So I'm just going to put it on. So that was cool because I then realised, even though I've got that as a parameter, none of those are going to work with that particular piece of music. But sound cool. So that is something that you could try and challenge yourself with. So gamifying music is something that doesn't have to be done with, you know, rewards and things like that. You can do it with just a way to practice and create a space for you to make mistakes but enjoy the journey. Because of these parameters that you're imposing on yourself, you're more likely to meet failure points, and dealing with those failure points is a really important part of developing as a musician and as a person. So there's some of my little tips. If you are easily bored, easily distracted, you can just practice some different approaches that you may not have tried before. You know, they're alternatives to necessarily sitting and watching a lesson on YouTube. You know, this is how you play this song. This is more generalized for your own playing and your own enjoyment. And hopefully it will lead to you finding your own voice as a musician, which is, you know, even if you are an amateur, even if you've only been playing for a couple of years, or if you've only just picked up the instrument, there's so much more to playing the guitar than just playing a couple of songs or a couple of scales over songs. You can use this as your voice, and by doing some of these methods, it will help you do that. I'd just like to thank Hotone for sending me this amp to use as practice, as a practice device. But this applies for anything, any bit of kit. You don't always need fancy kit to get good. A lot of our heroes didn't. But if you enjoyed this, please like and share and subscribe.